Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Georgina Donahue. I am the Director of Community here at Pragmatic Institute, and I am so glad that you could all join us today for an incredibly data-driven conversation. I am joined by our esteemed panel of really advanced product practitioners and proud Pragmatic alumni to discuss the state of the product industry with you today. So together, we'll be diving into early insights from Pragmatic's annual State of the Industry survey. And not only are we going to give you an exclusive sneak peek at some of our data, but we're also going to get to gather our panel's thoughts and reactions and insights on what those numbers really mean for us that are doing the work every day. So let me introduce you to our incredible panelists. We have with us Marlon Davis, who is the Fractional Chief Product Officer at the Frugal PM, Akshay Mathur, who is the Principal Product Manager at Televox, Kelly Newman, former Global Director of Product Management at Prime Revenue, and Noa Ganot, who is the founder and CEO of Infinify Limited. Welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for being with us. All of our guests today are not only accomplished product professionals, but they're esteemed members in Pragmatic's alumni community. So they're each examples of the incredible minds that come together in our community, which is now over 50,000 strong. It's a place where really the brightest and most innovative and certainly the most generous product people in the industry all come together to collaborate. So I hope that you will come join us to exchange your ideas and lessons and insights with other amazing members. And I'm excited to be talking to you about this today because I'm thrilled to announce the launch of our newly enhanced alumni community. We have recently introduced a whole host of really exciting resources, including AI Compass, course refreshers, step-by-step guided tutorials on exactly how to apply what you learned in class to your daily habits. So we'll share a link down below, and I really hope to see you there soon. Now, let's dive into the data. Let's get to know our panel. Before we reveal the survey insights and also our panel's predictions, I would love to hear from each of you. Tell me in the chat, what is your product prediction for 2025? What are the big changes that you think we'll see in the product landscape? What should we all be watching for? Drop your best prediction in the chat, and we are also going to ask this question to our panelists at the end of the session, so you can see if your insights are similar to what any of our panel are thinking about. So tell me in the chat. With that, let's get started. Noa, Akshay, Marlon, Kelly, welcome. I am so glad that you are all here. We are going to jump right into our first data insights. And start warming up with some ideas from our folks on the line here. So something that product pros will be very familiar with is this kind of perennial conversation in the industry about how everyone's trying to find a little bit more time to spend on strategic work and initiatives versus always being pulled into some tactical firefighting. So we took a look at the data and we looked at the average amount of time that folks are spending on tactical versus strategic work across the entire data sample. And that average is about 68% of time is spent on tactical items and 32% is spent on strategy. We drilled down a little bit. What about the folks that are really adept at using AI in their workflows? How about those that manage more than 20 products? Do they spend more time on strategy? Same thing with senior leadership. As you get higher, do you spend more time on strategy? And despite those shifts, the baseline remained fairly stable. What was really interesting is that we saw that about 30% of time spent on strategic activities was very closely associated with positive outcomes for both the individual and the organization. So those people that spent 30% of their time on strategy had a higher likelihood to have company revenue growth year over year for their product. They were more likely to receive an annual bonus, and on average, they tended to have higher salaries that were or over $150,000 a year. So a little bit of a new take. Is there perhaps a Goldilocks zone that kind of goes against our common idea that more strategy is always better? So I want to ask our panelists this question. Does this ring true for you? Marlon, if you want to kick us off, how do you feel about this Goldilocks zone in your industry and role? And how specifically have you seen successful and really effective product folks balance their time between tactical and strategic work?
Yeah, so this this percentage actually looks fairly common within the industries that I've been into. A fair amount of the effort will be placed on tactical. So if you think about it from a product execution perspective, all the way from discovery to ideation to development and out to commercialization, those are the areas where you really want that time to be spent anyway, because those are customer value add for the customer, which is why they're called customer value add. Areas such as, strategy and operations gets to 30% there. Too much of that, you're spending time on things that aren't really value add for the customer. And I think that Goldilocks zone is going to, by industry, it's going to switch. It's going to be a little bit different. It's going to vary. But I think that's a pretty accurate, Goldilocks zone. And I don't think that anyone should aim for that. Really, you should do what's in the best interest of your organization from, trying to pursue your outcomes. But it's a good rule of thumb to try and assess how your product function and your product team is operating.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think having an idea of what's appropriate or at least average is very validating for folks, because if you're spending about 30% of your time on strategy, but you're hoping and dreaming to spend 60% of your time, then maybe there's a little bit of discord between your idea and the work that you're actually doing. So I completely agree. It's a good kind of frame of reference. Noa, does that percentage ring true for you as well? How do you react to that?
So I would say that, first of all, here we broke it down by sort of the position, but there is probably another dimension that maybe fits better to the split, and that is the current situation of the company. Generally, strategy is needed whenever uncertainty is really high. And uncertainty is high, I would say, in two main situations. One is when you start a new product and you really don't know what's going to work and whatnot. It could be a startup, but it could also be a mature company where they want to introduce a new product. And the other thing is when there's a crisis, what you used to do doesn't work anymore, or maybe the world around you changed and you have to respond quickly. Unfortunately, we've seen a few examples for that in recent years. And I think at those stages, more strategy is needed. And if you just focus on the tactics, you're going to do a lot, but not necessarily do the things that are going to get you to where you want to be. And perhaps a more general note, when we think about strategy and tactics, I think they need to be more integrated. In everything that you do, there needs to be at least a slight amount of strategy. So you cannot be, that's why I'm against, having product owners who only focus on execution. The very minimum that any product person needs to have is at least to fully understand the strategy that comes from the leadership. So you have to have a spark of strategy in everything that you do.
I think that's such a great point, Noa. And it's really about weaving it together. It's not enough to just know what needs to be done. You have to be able to bring it into the work. And it's also not enough to just put your head down and execute without taking a look around at where you're going. So I agree. I think the idea that tactical's over here and strategic is over here is a little bit flawed, and weaving them together is really where the strength comes. Akshay and Kelly, I'm curious about your thoughts of that blend and that balance. Kelly, maybe you can start for us here. What are some of your suggestions or your top tips for how product professionals can really strike that balance and the weaving that Noa is talking about when they're deciding how to spend their time and their focus?
Yeah, I think, there's always going to be tactical work to be done. I think the list of tactical things is never ending, and it's really hard to not get distracted by it, right? So what I would say is you need to set aside strategic time. So where I've seen it work for me is setting aside time on my calendar to focus on those strategic items and be intentional about it, meaning I know what I'm going to do when I get into that block. It's not just an open hour or 2 hours where I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do at that time. So being intentional about it and being respectful of my calendar. We always talk about being respectful of other people's calendars, but being respectful of my own time and my own calendar. So if I do get a question, an email, a Slack that comes in that's maybe important but not urgent, understanding that can wait, being respectful of my own time and focusing on those strategic efforts. And then I would also say use your business partners, right? If you're getting a lot of tactical questions and tactical work, execution type items to where you're not finding that balance, use other people in your organization that you've built relationships with and say, hey, why don't you ask customer success that question? They're going to be able to answer it for you and give you context that maybe I wouldn't have.
It's really nice language in particular as well. And I love the thought about being very well-mannered to your own calendar and extending the grace that you would extend to a coworker, to yourself. I think that's a great add-on of the approach to blocking a calendar to do this kind of work. I love that. Akshay, anything that you do in your day-to-day work or you've seen others in your industry do that really makes sure that they're carving out an appropriate balance and weaving together tactical and strategic work?
Yeah, so the way I work, and when, as Noah said, when I work on a new product, then of course strategic time is much more. And when on a product that is setting down, that strategic time is much less. The strategic in the sense, the way people understand it. Typically on a product that is going in a growth path, what I typically do is keep 3 buckets, not just 2 buckets. One bucket is strategic items. Other bucket is customer ask. That is considered technical. But one more bucket, third one, that is the technical debt that engineering brings in. And because balancing that also is very important. And roughly they are given equal weightage to all 3 these buckets. Of course, it's not a hard rule. So sometimes one goes more, so one goes less, and that thing happens. But if we take over a longer period of time, say, for example, over a quarter or over a year, that balance comes in equally. The other thing is that no matter whether it's a customer ask, we always need to look at from the strategic lens, whether it is aligning with our overall goal, our overall strategy or not. If somebody is asking for a very random feature or random addition that may not make sense for our product strategy or our company strategy, we should be going back and saying no to it. And it happened sometimes. People ask in my previous product, oh, you already doing this much, let's do this much more and we will get something else. And like, boss, no, because that this much more takes us into a very different product area and very different product market that we are not at this point ready to go ahead and work into. So we'll not do this feature because it doesn't fit into our strategy. Saying that no sometimes is very important. Otherwise, the product also becomes like it goes all over the place. And later on, it becomes very difficult to align everything.
Yeah. And I love actually how you have added some kind of approaches and ideas to shine the light on the point that Noah made as well, that you need to constantly be guided by all of these different factors at the same time, and how you gave examples of weaving the strategic into the tactical asks is wonderful. Thank you. We are going to chat a little bit about profiles of success. So each of you here have incredibly impressive careers and accomplishments. And I'm sure that you also have the great pleasure and honor of spending a lot of time around successful product professionals as well. So we wanted to do a deep dive into the profile of successful product professionals so that we could uncover who they are, how they're allocating their time, what success looks like in their world, so that all of us can learn from that and emulate them. So here for this analysis, we define success as product professionals who are earning above $150,000 annually. They have demonstrated clear company revenue growth in the past year over year, and they're also a candidate for an annual bonus. So kind of quick demographic overview of who these people are in the data segment. 85% of them have been in the industry for over 10 years, which is not terribly surprising, but it is interesting to note that a large majority of them have been in their current roles for less than 5. So it's not necessarily people that have a incredible tenure at a specific organization, but those that have developed an expertise over the course of their career. Generally, these folks were managing less than 5 products in their portfolio, and they did follow the strategic and tactical split according to the average that we just talked about. Typically, we found these professionals in the software industry and also in healthcare. However, that's a reflection of the broader industry trends and the demographics that we saw across the entire data set. So what we did was we dove a little bit deeper into how our product marketers, and then we'll talk a little bit next about product managers. What are their responsibilities? What are their daily tasks? And how are they measuring success for their outcomes? So for product marketers, you could see that 100% of these profiles of success respondents to the data were responsible for positioning. So a very, very clear winner, indisputable up top. But these folks are also thinking a lot about market problems, competitive analysis, defining their segments. The daily tasks, you can see how those strategic responsibilities are reflecting tactical tasks. These product marketers who are very successful are really rolling up their sleeves to write customer content. They are leading sales trainings. They are putting together demo presentations for customers. And then they also have that strategic reflection where they are predominantly guiding and writing entire launch plans and strategies. The way that they measure their success in order of commonality is revenue, NPS, and overall market share of the product that they are responsible for. When we toggle to look a little bit closer at product managers specifically, you can see that the main responsibilities are prioritizing market problems. And then, of course, you have to get those market problems from somewhere. So also market research was the second one up. They share responsibility for competitive analysis with their product marketing peers. And their daily tasks are also a similar mix of strategic and tactical. So these folks are writing requirements. They are mapping out specific use scenarios, but they're also maintaining and updating and communicating their roadmaps. We see more commonalities here in measurement. So revenue and NPS were the big two as well, but diverging from product marketers, product managers are also measuring the timeliness of their product or feature launches, and then also overall product usage among existing customers or new customers. So these are a lot of pretty specific and data-driven responsibilities and daily tasks. I imagine that, panel, these are not terribly surprising findings to you. And so what I'm really curious about is what can you tell us and shed some light on that looks at the more tacit side of really successful product professionals? So what are they doing that might not show up on a data report like this? So Akshay, I'm going to throw the first one to you. Beyond specific business responsibilities, what kind of interpersonal skills or tacit leadership responsibilities do you see this kind of hallmark of successful professional taking upon themselves?
Product management is a kind of role where you are responsible for everything, but you don't have authority for anything. So everything like development needs to be done by engineering team, deployment needs to be done by the implementation team, marketing needs to be done by marketing team. But if something fails, product person is being asked. So you need to get your work done only by influence rather than by authority. So it is very, very important for product professional to build relationship with all the departments. Pretty much you need to build relationship even with legal and finance and no matter what, sales operations, sales administration, everybody. So you need to build relationship with everyone, and you need to have a kind of relationship that you can influence their work in the right direction. And of course, people have their styles and their way of working, their reservations and everything. And the product person need to understand them, navigate them, and still get the work done. They need to understand what triggers a salesperson make a sale, what triggers, how they are evaluated, so that, say for example, product person can go ahead and influence sales leadership to set up a kind of comp plan so that salesperson is selling a strategic product more than a cash cow product, those kind of things. And similarly it goes for all other departments, like how different people, different departments are working, and how you can go ahead and influence so that they don't feel bad and still do a much better job in the direction, the way you want to take the product or you want to take the company overall. So that is the important aspect for the product.
Yeah,
person.
I agree. And I think that this kind of building of grassroots leadership and influence and really goodwill and natural leadership in the organization is something that we see in product professionals quite often because of this responsibility without authority. Marlon, I want to ask you about what Akshay has said. Do you feel that tendency among product folks makes them really good candidates for senior leadership or executive because they have all of this time spent cultivating influence and kind of cult of personality and cross-functional relationships? Do you see that as a proving ground for executive roles, or is there sometimes a disconnect?
So my response, my answer to you would be, I think in following up on that, it is a trait, but it is not the only trait that would indicate success in the senior level management layers, because the role of an individual contributor, though you have influential leadership, is not the same as now you're getting into the role of I need to organize the function. My responsibilities are going to be a bit different. It's not just about how can I bring the product to market. It's also how do I structure the team where it can be most proficient and efficient in getting a product to market. How do I structure a team to work harmoniously with the other departments? How do I structure the team in time to work on strategy appropriately so it can be the guiding light all the way from what the company goals and OKRs are down to even what a roadmap has on it. So those are the differences between the two roles. But if you have influential leadership, you definitely have at least part of what you need to get into a senior leadership role in product management.
Yeah, really smart. I agree. I like the idea that it is an essential trait, but if that is the one thing you've cultivated, you might not be quite there yet. There's a couple of other things to consider as well. Really great feedback. Kelly, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this conversation, and if you could comment a little bit about some of the soft skills and the characteristics and maybe even the habits of successful product professionals, either that you've observed in your space or things that have worked really well for you. How do some of those soft skills contribute to these more direct responsibilities to build a profile of a really successful professional?
Yeah, and when I think back on my career and my development, there are some things that really stick out through my own personal, soft skill development. I had a colleague recently say to me, you're the consistent voice of reason in the room. And that really got me thinking and I was shocked a little bit because I have not always been the voice of reason in the room. When I started out in product leadership, I was very passionate, some would say, about my opinions. But as I've developed as a product leader, I recognize being a good listener and a good interpreter of others' problems and pain points is so fundamental to this role. You really got to learn how to ask the right why questions to dig in and get a better understanding of people's perspectives. Learn how to bring people together. A lot of times you'll be in situations where people don't agree. And when you start asking those why questions, you can generally get to a point of commonality between the teams that you're working with. So I think, again, being a good listener, being a good interpreter, being a little bit of a therapist in some instances, really lead to really great product leaders.
Yeah, I agree. And I really appreciate that reflection of some of our own tendencies and characteristics and how we can start to either turn up the volume or turn down the volume on those characteristics while still putting the entire team forward and bringing kind of our unique skills and qualities forward. So I appreciate that a lot, Kelly. Noa, I have a feeling that you have some interesting thoughts on what Kelly just said in this conversation in general. So do you feel that way as well? Do you see that? Have you seen that in your career? And I guess specifically, I'd be really curious to know when you are looking across the industry and you see someone and you're like, wow, that is an incredibly inspiring and competent and exceptional product professional. What gives them away as that to you? What are the kind of tells or the green flags that identify them in that way?
Awesome. So first of all, I agree with what everyone said. Kelly, what you said just really resonated with what I had in mind. And I agree also that product management, product leadership require slightly different skills and a different mindset. Regarding your question, I would add two traits perhaps to the mix. And they are like sneaky ones, not so easy to judge perhaps externally. One is a sharp mind. We work in such a complex environment, and there are no straightforward yes or no answers. The most common answer for any product management question is it depends. So you have to be able to create clarity in such a complexity. You have to be able to separate the wheat from the chaff. You have to be able to communicate clearly and help not just yourself think, but also help others think. That's one trait. And the other one is, thinking and coming up with good ideas is not enough, because eventually you have to be able to make things happen. So I would say internal locus of control, for those of you who are familiar with the term, is really, really important. Essentially, it's the ability to move things, and it comes from a deeper belief that your actions matter and can really impact the outcome. Otherwise, and I've seen, unfortunately, people who are great thinkers, but weren't able to move in the jungle of the organization and the market to make things happen. And at some point, they would become the victims of their own ideas because they couldn't pull them through. And that's really, really difficult, and eventually not an effective product management outcome, I would say.
I can see that very clearly, that, you have all these wonderful ideas and it's like slogging through quicksand. You can become weary, right? You become weary and tired. You can't quite pull through. And I really do appreciate what you said also about a quick mind and being able to get straight to the point through a lot of kind of fascia that might exist, right? And so one thing I've noticed is the best product professionals tend to be very concise. They're really good at taking a large concept or a complicated tangle and expressing it in one or two sentences in a way that everyone in the room can immediately understand what's going on. And so that's kind of what I call to mind as you're talking about the sharp mind as well.
Exactly. Now, I would say not only, mostly the people in the room wouldn't only be able to understand, but when it makes sense, people would agree. And that's kind of the secret power that a great product manager and product leader has.
Yeah, I love that. All right, let's pivot, gang. I want to talk a little bit about the other side of success and what keeps people up at night. What are our product peers worrying about? And maybe it's not keeping them up at night, but it's probably popping into their head while they're trying to take a shower or make a sandwich or do something else. So let's talk a little bit about the woes that arose in our data this year. So the first one is trouble bringing market needs to life, right? And so I think this is a beautiful tie-in to what you've just commented on, Noah, is there are a number of product professionals that told us that they're worrying about the disconnect between the customer market needs and the final product that is being created. And I think that a lot of this tension and worry is coming from the fact that the product team didn't describe that they had misinterpreted the market problem. They know the market problem, but the development expression, their ability to translate that into features and into products is not quite adequately solving the need. And they're trying to figure out what to do about that. So I want to pose this one to you, Akshay. In your experience, why does that disconnect between known market problems and the expressed product solutions? Where does that come from? How does that arise? And what could be going wrong in the translation there?
So what I have seen mostly is somebody knows the market problem, and then what they really express is not the intent, but what they think should be a solution. And there may be more solutions. So what I typically try to do is, when somebody says, oh, I need this, I said, okay, you need this, that's fine, we'll get you. But tell me how you are going to use this. What is your intent behind this ask? What really are you trying to achieve out of it? That gives a background idea that what is in their mind, what their real problem is, not just what it is looking like. So that's one side of it. Then what happens is product manager get this, but when they tell engineering team, again the same thing happens. They frame a solution and then they communicate that to engineering, and then engineering thinks of it differently and pull together something else. So what I try to do, and sometimes it becomes, some people say, oh, you talk too much or you communicate too much to engineering. But I ask this thing multiple times in multiple companies to engineering, do you think I should tell you less? And every time I got the response that no, you should keep telling all these information, because it helps us understand the basic needs and come up with a better solution. And what other things that happen is, so many questions that engineering ask product about decisions. Oh, small thing, how should I take this decision? Should I place it here or here? Should I put a drop down or a list? So all those, there may be design questions, maybe the workflow questions. Those are automatically answered because engineering team members know what is the real intent behind it and who is the persona who is going to use it, what are the persona characteristics, how they are going to interact with this UI or this feature overall. So that simplifies the end-to-end thing. The engineering also knows the intent behind the ask, the real problem that is going to be solved.
Yeah. And it makes,
So doing
go ahead.
what I was saying is, yes. One sentence that I used to say in one of my startups that, oh, we do all this so that we can sleep peacefully at night.
Well, and it makes a lot of sense in what you're saying, that if the product manager knows the market need and knows the market problem, but nobody else in the organization knows it because the context has not been shared or has not been conveyed in a way that's easily understandable to the rest of the organization who are working on these things, then I feel like that would be a little burdensome, and that might keep me up at night too. So I think that is wonderful advice. And a really good reminder that you'd have to be pretty verbose until your colleagues told you to stop sharing context with them. I don't think anyone has ever told me to stop sharing context either. So I agree, and great advice, Akshay. Noa, I'm going to throw the ball back to you because I want to talk to you about the time, resources, and quality matrix. So our product folks have really high standards for themselves. They want to have an incredibly high impact. They want to be effective. They want to drive revenue with their work. They are dead set on delivering A+ work. And I do think that's a hallmark characteristic of the folks that find themselves in this industry. They're a little bit of perfectionists because they want to delight their customers with the products and the services that they're delivering. However, we've got a lot of people that are staying up at night because they don't have the time or the resources available to deliver that A+ work. And they are unwilling to compromise the quality as a result of the lack of resources or time. So what are some kind of either, tactical strategies or personal mindsets that you can offer to help coach people through this kind of catch-22? Are there opportunities for people to create more time and resources for themselves? Or if they're really not able to increase those, how can they thoughtfully adapt their expectations and say, you know what, I think it's reasonable for this to be a B+ product at this time. How would you recommend folks get a little sleep?
This is a great question. So speaking as an extreme professionalist here, I constantly have to remind myself that a perfect outcome is not necessarily what we're looking for. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't, but I have to keep that conversation going. This is like a general statement. But at the more practical level, what helps me, and it helped me, with managing myself and my own time, as well as managing the time and resources and quality that the team can deliver, is being super crisp on what is it that we're trying to achieve here. I have been able to reduce scope many times. I have been able to prevent over-engineering because I knew what we're trying to do here. That requires really, really being very clear on what we're trying to do and also monitoring that. So showing up to the daily stand-ups or daily meetings of the team, you don't even have to speak, but just listen to see if they're still on track, or did they just lose their way and went, to over-engineer things, building more than you need. I've also seen examples where it's perfectly fine to have something that doesn't really work. I've had that, again, it depends on what you need. I've had at one time a feature that engineering came and told me that they have to rewrite it, it's not working. And they were right. It was really not working. But I didn't want them to spend the time and resources to rewrite it because no one was using it. The reason I knew no one was using it is because it was written so poorly that had anyone been using it, I would have heard about it. So I knew no one is using it. And still, it appeared on every RFI and RFP document that we got. And therefore, I knew it was important for our customers to have the option to use that. Our competition had the same feature I believe, at the same level of quality, but our customers didn't really want to use it. So I told engineering, I told them, we're going to leave the feature as is. The only reason I want to have it live now is to be able to answer those RFPs and RFIs positively. I promise you, and I meant that if and when somebody wants to use it for real, I will then allocate the time to rewrite that. And I meant to fulfill on that promise, but that never happened. So we kept answering those RFIs and RFPs positively, and everybody slept well at night without changing anything. So you have to know what is it that you really, really, really need. And that's when creativity can come in.
Yeah. And I think also that's the role of a strong leader who's able to say, okay, whoa, everybody, things are looking a little cuckoo bananas here. Let's pull back. Let's collect. What are we actually trying to solve for here? And I think that that's really the North Star. And I love the way that you positioned that. And that's such a great example, Noa, as well. Marlon, I want to pull you into the conversation because the other thing that keeps people up is not having that strong leader and not having that North Star where they are expressing difficulties in defining or maintaining a clear product strategy. They're looking to their leadership to say, save me from this madness. What should I do? What are we actually trying to solve here? And they're unable to grasp it or get hold of it. Right. So what can be done if you find yourself in that situation and you're feeling a little bit scattered and reactive? You're not sure where your North Star is. And how do you seek out and identify a product strategy from leadership? And, if that quest is not delivering adequate guidance, how do you proceed?
So I'm going to answer this in two ways. One is from the product manager's perspective. He or she can only do what's in front of them, and they can ask for those things. But if you've got poor product leadership or you have pretty weak company strategy from a goals perspective, there's not much that a product person can do to influence that. What they can do, though, is to, even in the absence of any clear goals from top down, you can still pursue improving how the product works, doing further market penetration into the current market segments you're in. So even in the absence of strong product strategy and absence of strong company goals and strategies, the company can coast, at least from a product manager perspective, on getting better with penetrating into the current market segments you're in. So they could have a more myopic focus on that. From a head of product perspective, he or she has the relationship, I should say the responsibilities, not relationships, but the responsibilities to work with the other senior leaders to make sure that there is good corporate strategy, because without that, you're not going to have good alignment on what the product team is doing. So the other senior leadership members are wanting to do one thing without good, strong corporate governance in terms of the guidance. But then you've got your product management leadership not really having anything to tether them to the organization, who will then work from a bottom-up perspective, and you never want that. You have to work from the top down and from the bottom up, and the two need to align and meet. So again, the product leader can help that product manager with, hey, this is the domain of what it is that we can focus on and get accomplished. And that product manager can then turn around and do the same thing within those current market segments by translating customer needs from, say, win-loss data. You can do that from prospects that you've lost. You can at least get further market penetration in by understanding what are those top gaps. So there are things that you can do at each level, but the real root cause of the whole problem should and does start with, do we have good company goals and strategy that everything is inheriting from, that really right sizes and sets the boat straight so everybody can be rolling in alignment on what the company needs to do to be successful, and no one is off doing his or own thing from one department to the next, from product managers to engineering. You never want that. So the root cause of this whole issue is to go back to, what do we have from corporate goals, OKRs, that are really driving what the organization should be doing?
Mm-hmm. and translating that down and communicating it down to the team so you can come in and say, this is really where we're trying to go. This is the direction, and offering that, not doing it for your team, but you provide the lattice, they climb up it, right?
Correct. And it'll really help them too with the time and resources kind of question that you gave to Noah, because, hey, what's most important for the business to work on? Okay, let it all cascade down. These are the most important things for product to work on. But guess what? This is the most important thing for you to work on, product manager, in order to move the business forward. So everyone inherits off of it. Everyone is aligned and everything stays smooth and clean, and everybody remains calm as they execute.
Yeah. Okay, let's pivot here. I want to chat with you guys about some real direct tactics and advice, because we have some secret problems. So another question that we asked in this survey is, if you could write a secret note to your CEO that would be totally anonymous and you have complete immunity from sharing this feedback with your CEO directly, what would you say to her or to him? And these ranged from, kind of goofy. We got one that was like, I love your shoes, all the way up to some really serious problems that, hey, I'm worried that this company is not viable based on this direction, right? So what we saw the most were these three topics. Please trust me. Please focus. And really, I just can't do any more with any less. So what I'd like to ask each of you about is for some very practical, tactical tips that if someone listening to this is having this problem and they can relate, or maybe they entered this in the survey, what is one thing that they could do today or tomorrow or this week to start to ameliorate that issue and start to kind of solve for that problem? So the first one that we heard a lot is, I really wish that my CEO would just trust me. I don't think that she or he understands what my role is. And I wish that they would understand what I do and trust that I want a success outcome too. Please move out of my way. Don't micromanage me. I want to just be let off the leash to go crush these targets. Marlon, I'll keep it rolling with you. What is a very practical, actionable thing that one could do to help solve this issue if you find yourself in it?
Sure. I'll direct this and keep it short and sweet. Playbooks. If you've been ahead of product, the best thing you can do is have a playbook that coincides with the corporate and company strategy, and speak often, speak frequently, speak often. I think I said that 3 times in almost 3 different ways, to communicate that information to your CEO. So he or she is really along with the journey. You've got open communication and you've got a playbook. So they know what you're going to do. It's not a trust me and I'm going to run off and do something and come back. It's a, no, this is what we're going to do that's going to get us to the goals that we outline, that we share in common. So here's the playbook and here's how we're going to go about it. Hopefully that was short and sweet.
I love that. I think that's really great advice. Kelly, I'd like to chat with you about the next one. The other thing that we saw were folks feeling frustrated that their CEO was seeming to chase after a different kind of shiny object all the time and didn't display the type of focus that they were expecting, right? And now the role of a contributor and the role of a CEO is very different, but this is the perception, right? Product folks are asking their CEOs, please give me enough time with one particular path forward to show some really positive results there before you decide that it's not working and switch us to a different topic. So what would you suggest that someone can do to start getting a little bit more time or space or ability to show results before the CEO lost confidence and lost focus?
Yeah, I wish I could say that I've never been in this situation before. I wish I could say that, but that would be a lie. And I think back to, I wish I knew who said this, but at some point in my career, I read something where someone said product managers need to know it all without being know-it-alls. And that's very difficult to do in practice. And I think in this situation, it's nearly impossible from a one-on-one perspective. I think product leaders, if they go in and have a one-on-one with the CEO and say, yeah, no, what your idea is to do next is not right. We need to focus on this. In my experience, there's no way to say that doesn't make you sound like you're a know-it-all. So what I have found that's worked for me in the past, and I think each business and each culture is a little bit different, is going back to those relationships and alliances that you've built with other leaders within the organization, right? And running those things through them. Say, hey, we're talking about moving focus. We're talking about changing from this to this. Tell me a little bit about what's going on in your side of the business related to this. One or two things are going to happen. You're either going to grow those alliances in that area, and you can work together to provide material information to your CEO on focus, right? And then if you have those conversations and you don't have material information to provide, then that might be your sign that you do need to step back. And maybe it is more of a you thing than a them thing. And let your CEO be the CEO and make the decision on this one, as hard as it might be.
Such good perspective. And I think something that is very accessible to most product professionals, because the answer is really, you need to do more research. You gotta go and have a couple more conversations and kind of figure out where you are and also build those connections with other leaders and other collaborators in different areas. Great advice, Kelly. I think that's a really good approach for folks. Okay, let's talk, Akshay, let's talk about how there is definitely a constant desire for more resources. That's a common business challenge. Everyone always wants more headcount. They want more tools, but it seems to be a little exacerbated in the current space and the current economic environment. And so we hear a lot about folks not just complaining about staff cuts or lack of tool investment or training, but they really feel a concern that the kind of low budgeting is preventing the organization from achieving the results the CEOs are after. So what is your advice to someone who is saying, I want to deliver good results, but I've got a skeleton crew here. How do I still do my job properly?
So I would say cuts are not always bad. And see, when you have too much headcount, then you need to manage them as well. There are more conflicts and there are more problems. It's also when you have a low headcount, some of the things you can do much better. And say, for example, we built a company when we deliberately for many, many years kept that overall company strength will remain less than 10. So between those less than 10 people, they are developing, they are testing, they are deploying, selling, marketing, everything. So coming back, so cutting things, not always bad. That's one point I was making. Other thing is, now the question is, how do we work with that? So the way to work with that, and that I did the experience in multiple scenarios, one thing that I already talked about, right? If you communicate the context all over, then so much of requirements of work will go down automatically because people are taking decisions by themselves. And then, so that's one way of doing more with less number of resources. And if you have less number of people, you will require less tooling and all that, because like so much of context are managed with less sophisticated tools rather than more sophisticated tools. Like you don't need a big process for everything because you have like 3 people managing the whole show. So there are ways, but of course, I've seen places where people do without any product manager. I don't say that it is very good scenario. You need to have at least one product manager who is focused completely on the product aspects of it, but the person can still manage so many things. again, it comes to the creative ways of doing it, and there is nothing like, okay, this is one thing that you do and then it will solve all the problems. Nothing like that. It's a creative role. It's a science and art both. So people need to figure out in their specific scenario and the kind of teams they have around and all that, what works better for that purpose. So again, yep. And one thing that I said earlier, right? So product management is a role that is a central role, and they need to coordinate with everything. So one thing that when you are less on staff, you keep delegating different things to different departments. So that is another way of doing things. Like, okay, say product managers do competitive analytics, but product marketers also do. If we don't have staff in product management too much for doing that, ask for help in product marketing. And like product managers do some of the technical research as well. If you are less staffed, request engineering to do that, and so on. These are just some examples to navigate the path in the scenario.
Great examples. And I also think a really good perspective shift on it's not necessarily just going to be harder and more work. There are areas that a lower number of contributors is going to lighten for you as well. So there is some positive and there is some silver lining there for you as well. I love that. All right, we have talked about top-level thoughts and ideas about strategy and tactics. We have gotten really practical with some specific advice. Let's go way back broad. I have an enormous broad question that, Noah, I would love for you to lead us on, but I'm going to ask all of you to share with us what is your one prediction for product professionals in 2025? What are you keeping your eye on? What do you expect to see? What should the folks that are here with us be thinking about? You can answer this very broad question however you want. Noah, would you kindly kick us off?
Sure. So I think my answer, you can put any year that you want there in the question. It's a more generic one on, I would say, a blind spot that many product professionals sort of have. If you ask me, product management and product leadership is the most beautiful profession in tech, really. It's an amazing one to have. And yet it's one of the most challenging. And as you become more and more senior, one of the things that people often miss is what really is your role. Because in more, I would say, entry-level or standard product management roles, a lot of it is about execution, or unfortunately tends to be about execution, although we said you have to at least understand strategy and impact it. But as you climb the organizational ladder, you have to lead more strategically, but no one asks you to. So one of the mistakes that I see organizations make is that they think the product leader's role is to manage the product department. And that's definitely part of the role. But it's also a more horizontal role where you need to help the entire leadership team be aligned and think things through. And no one will ever ask you to do that. So you're going to have to push yourself into these conversations and provide valuable insights that are not necessarily based on what you already know, but rather on what you listen to in the room. So help people understand each other. For example, when I work as a strategic advisor to startups, I sometimes work with startup founders, and we sit in the room. There are multiple founders. They are working really well together. They have been on this for years now, and they think they understand each other. And I say something or they say something, and you see people nodding. And I often say, but wait, you're nodding, but you're not understanding it the same way. What did you try to say? What did you think they just said. And you can see that there are completely different views of what the same words that were just spread in the room. So as a product leader and as a product manager who's striving to become a leader, it's not about the formal appointment of, you are a leader now, please come lead us. It's more about helping with this alignment, even if no one asked you to.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. I have a feeling that there are a lot of folks out there that are going to have this appear, or this need or requirement appear in their 2025 or any year, as you said. Kelly, what do you have for us for 2025? What's going to happen? What should we be looking for? What's your great prediction for the next year?
So I'm actually going to talk a little bit about what has happened. So in 2023 and 2024, there was a lot of talk around, product management is dead. And there was this trend of actually splitting strategy from execution. So product management wasn't really dead, but it was split, where you saw some of the larger organizations moving product strategy into marketing, product execution moving under development. And I think the intent there was to do a little bit of what we talked about earlier around focusing more on strategy, right? Letting product managers be more strategic. What it uncovered was this unhappiness with development, right? When this was, the hot trend, developers cheered, right? Because quite frankly, they were tired of trying to explain things to non-technical product people. I do think that pendulum is going to start to swing back in 2025, meaning we're going to start pulling these things back in together. And for product managers to be successful, we need to embrace that gap and be a little bit more technical. I'm not saying be able to do what developers do, but if you're a strategic product manager, you need to take on those skills to lean technical when the conversation requires. That means understanding how relational databases work, understanding how CSS works. So you can at least have those conversations and bring your development counterparts in just like you would anybody else.
Yeah. I think that's excellent advice. And I do think that you're right, that those trends are there and happening. And it's a good watch out for folks that are starting to move along with that pendulum. Thank you. Akshay, what is your prediction for 2025? What do you think is going to happen, or that we should keep an eye on?
So I'll talk about two things. One, first, I will strengthen what Kelly just said, that a product person need to be good at both technology and business. If a product person is doing only one side, either only technology or only business, that's not going to be a good position into. And your work will diminish. And the one reason, and that's my prediction, is that more and more people are going to enter into product management area. Because it is a central role, a marketer can also come in, an engineer can also come in, a salesperson can also come in. Whosoever understands to do something in product management, they can come in and then try to expand. So to really differentiate, you need to have certain qualities. If you don't have it, you need to develop them. One thing that we talked about is understanding both technology, business, sales, marketing, and all the departments. Other is the core strength, and that is more of an art than science, like customer empathy or product sense, right? And understanding the context better, unearthing the intent behind the ask, those kind of things that we already talked about. These things are required to really become successful, because competition is going to increase more and more. And it's not just for 2025. This is going to happen all the time going forward. More and more professionals are going to come in, and then you need to navigate in there.
The bar is increasing. The bar is getting higher for success. Yeah.
and the bar you will not be able to beat just by the hard skills that you have, the task that you are doing. You need to beat them with more on the soft skills and the way you work with different departments, the way you understand problem and explain problem that Noah talked about, right? You should be able to clearly attribute things and get people to agree. So those are the skills that are more important than, oh yes, I maintain roadmap. That's okay. Anybody can do that.
Thoughtful prediction and very good advice as well. I think it's likely we'll see that come to pass. All right, Marlon, will you kindly bring us home? What is your prediction? The very last prediction for us for 2025. What should we be thinking about?
So here's my prediction for product professionals in 2025. I'm going to address the elephant that's in the room. I'm surprised that no one threw this out, but I will go ahead and throw it out. Generative AI and the large language models. Currently, product managers are using a lot of these tools such as Gemini, Claude, Perplexity, ChatGPT for a lot of use cases that are around the edges of the work that product managers have to do on a daily basis. Those things being communication, enhancing communication, such as emails, documents, blog content, things that are all content, focused from a copy perspective. The second thing is for research. It is enhance the abilities of product managers to perform market research. It gives you information and synthesizes it much more in the context of what it is of the original question that you're asking, and does a much better job than just basic search does to give you not only the information that you're seeking, but also jump off points to go find the underlying information. And Perplexity is particularly good at this, to give you the annotated footnotes of here's the originating document or documents that we used in order to answer this question. So those are two use cases that product managers are using. Where they come up short, and I'll use the Android platform, at least even the latest one, to explain this, which is, yes, you can do search, you can craft emails and communications, but you can't really execute tasks that well. On the Android platform, you can either use the Google Assistant or you can use Google Gemini. As I stated, Google Gemini will take care of your communication and your research needs. When you want to execute something such as setting an alarm or setting up notifications on weather and having it run a task for you to bring back information, maybe it's news, the two don't really meet. One is task oriented. The other one is, it's still task, but it's really focused on communications and research. I predict that those two worlds will match up, merge, get married in 2025. They'll do a much better job of allowing you to research and, say, as an example, craft an email and then send that email as a task. Schedule it to be sent out without having to, jump back and forth between the two, or manually set up or schedule your email after you've crafted the email content utilizing, one of these Gen AI tools. Once that happens, there will be more use cases that product managers will be able to apply this to in terms of daily execution. Maybe it's, notes that are being taken out. That's the third use case, actually, that these LLMs are pretty good at. When you're in meetings, online meetings, they will, transcribe the notes and summarize it pretty well and give you good takeaways. Well, imagine in 2025, them having the ability to go ahead and help execute on those calls to action that they identified. So that's where I think these tools would be even not necessarily adopted, because I think they're in high use already by product managers, but they'll be used for more and more use cases by product managers.
Yep. Absolutely. I hope that one is one that really takes off in the next year, and I don't see any reason why it couldn't, especially given the scope of conversations that we're having during this summit and all of the advice that you guys have shared as well. I think that we're really primed for all of these predictions to be very successful for folks here. That is the end of our time. So I am going to wrap it up with an enormous thank you. Noah, Akshay, Kelly, Marlon, thank you so much for joining us. Your insights have been so fresh and illuminating and practical and insightful all at the same time. It has been an absolute delight to chat with each of you. Thank you very much.